Hey everybody, and welcome. This is our Algebra Keystone Remediation. We're going to be talking through this topic of Topic 1 from Module 1 of the exam. This is writing and solving linear equations. This is Mr. Korb, by the way, and hopefully you can take away from this lesson how to write and solve linear equations a little bit clearer and how to understand it. So I'm going to go through the notes section here through a couple example problems, and if you have any questions, you can certainly ask your Keystone Remediation teacher of the next week. If you do have any questions, please feel free to contact me if you do. So starting off, we are going to be talking about writing and solving linear equations given a word problem, and we're going to walk through a couple just steps, like straight up just steps to figure out what you need to do, what you need to answer, and how you need to solve each one of these problems. So first up, we have step number 1. We're going to read the problem carefully and figure out what is the question actually being asked. Okay, so how do we figure out what is being asked? What are we trying to find? So we got to read the problem carefully, and if you have to reread a couple times, that's great. We are going to assign a variable to the quantity you are trying to find. We're then going to write down what the variable represents. So we're going to be identifying the variable and just signifying what it is so we can keep track in our minds what's going on. We're going to reread the problem and write an equation for the quantities given. Once we have an equation that's written, we are going to then solve the equation because we're going to try and figure out what this variable, this unknown number, is that represents this variable, so we can figure out what the solution is to the problem. Answer the question in the problem, and then we're going to check the solution to your problem. And when you check your solution, you want to make sure that it actually makes sense in the context of the problem as well. So when 6 is added to 4 times a number, the result is 50. Find the number. So right here, it's going to tell you what you need to find. So we read the problem carefully, and we're figuring out what we need to find. We're trying to find a number. So what we want to do here is we're going to let x be a number. Okay, so now we got to figure out, okay, we assigned a variable, we wrote down what the variable represents, we're going to reread the problem and write down an equation for the quantities given. So when 6 is added to 4 times a number, the result is 50. So here are some key phrases. When we have times, this word times, think about the wording, we are going to be multiplying. We know that added just means adding, and then when we have the result is, there's what our equation is going to be equal to. So when 6 is added to 4 times a number, so 4 times a number, remember, a number was going to be represented as x. We are going to add 6, and the result is 50. So we have 4x plus 6 is equal to 50 in this case, and we are going to just solve this problem step by step to get through it. This is a 2-step problem, so it's not too challenging here. So we're going to end up subtracting 6 on both sides. And this is just solving equations at this point. So we have 4x is equal to 44. And then we end up dividing by 4 on both sides. So using inverse operations, opposite operations of what we're seeing here. So 4 times x, the inverse operation is dividing. So multiplication and division are inverse operations. Same thing with addition and subtraction, just as a review. So x is equal to 11 in this case. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The sum of a number. Again, there's that number again. So the number is going to be what we're going to let x equal to. So let x be a number. So the sum of a number, we already said that that's going to be our x value, and 9 multiplied by -2, and the answer is 8. So there's a couple different steps here. So the sum of a number and 9, that just means addition, right? Sum is addition. So x plus 9, and then it says that whole sum is going to be multiplied by -2. So we're going to multiply that quantity by -2. And then we're going to set that equal to -8. Okay? Since we have our equation now, we're going to go ahead and solve it. A couple different ways you could do this. We can distribute out this -2 if you wanted to, or what we can do is we can just jump straight to division, because 2 times this quantity, the inverse operation is division. We're going to divide by -2 on both sides. Simplifies the problem a little bit quicker. So we're left with a 4 on this side. This side simplifies down to x plus 9. And then we're just one step away. We're going to subtract 9 on both sides. And we have x is equal to -5. So that's our solution. Okay, and we can check that by going back to the very beginning. If we say a sum of a number and 9, so -5 and 9, when we multiply that by -2, the answer is -8. And that does make sense. That is correct. So let's go ahead and move on. So that's practice 1, practice 2. Let's talk about practice 3. Now, practice 3, we were missing some part of the problem, so I'm just going to add that in here. The other thing that we're missing here is that the sum is 138. The sum of the highest and lowest scores are going to be 138. So when we add those two scores together. So here we're going to let x equal. So let x, so let's read the problem. On an algebra test, the highest grade was 42 points higher than the lowest grade. Find the lowest grade if the sum is 138. So we're going to let x be the lowest grade. And then if we know that the highest grade was 42 points higher, what are we doing with the initial grade? But we're adding it, right? So then we're going to let x plus 42 be the highest grade. Okay, so we identified our variable, which is x. We also identified what the other expression is going to be. And then we know that the sum is going to be 138. So with that information, we're going to go ahead and find the sum between these two. X is the lowest grade. Here's our lowest grade. And we're going to add that to x plus 42. Since this is the highest grade, so this is the lowest grade, this is the highest grade. And since it's a sum equal to 138, we can go ahead and solve. So these parentheses really aren't doing much other than containing these this expression, so we can just drop those. X plus x is going to be 2x, which is combining like terms. Okay, and we are going to go ahead and subtract 42 from both sides. Okay, we subtract 42, we have 2x is equal to 96. Divide by 2, and we get x is equal to 48. So the lowest grade is 48. Okay? Which then in turn we can go ahead and find what the highest grade was then by substituting it back in and solving. So in the next part here, it says the length of a rectangular map is 15 inches and the perimeter is 50 inches. Find the width. So a couple of prior knowledge things you want to understand here is that perimeter is going to be equal to, for a rectangle, is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And that should make sense. We have two sides that are going to be equivalent, that are the longer side, so that's 2 times L, and then 2 times W is the two sides on either side of the rectangle. So before we identify variables, why don't we write this out here? So we know that this is going to be length, we know that this is going to be width of our rectangle. Now in this case, it says the length of the rectangle is going to be 15 inches. So we know that L is going to be 15 right away. So if we're trying to find perimeter, we need to solve for W. So we're going to let W be the width of the rectangle in inches. Okay, so we identified our variable. Now we're going to go ahead and write a problem that we have here. So we're going to substitute in the values that we know. We know our perimeter is going to be 50, so there's our P. We know that our L is 15, so let's substitute in. So we have 50 is equal to, and we're using the equation from up above, the perimeter equation, 2 times 15 plus 2 times W. So 2 times 15, we noted that to be 30, plus 2W is equal to 50. And then we're going to go ahead and subtract 30 from both sides. And we're at a two-step equation now. So that's 20 is equal to 2W. We're going to inverse operations. So we're going to divide by 2. W is going to be equal to 10. Okay? And we want to signify this as inches, right? We want to use labels when they are applicable. Excuse me. So W is equal to 10 inches. And we can substitute this in. If we plug this number back in, we know that that's 10. The opposite side is going to be congruent or equal measurement. So we have 10 and then we have 15 here. 15 and 15 make 30, plus 10 is 40, plus 10 is going to be 50. And we knew the area or the perimeter was 50. So there we go. We solved it. Let's do one more problem. and then you have a worksheet to complete for the next remediation period. So find two consecutive integers. Consecutive mean right after one another. So we have some number here, and then we have another number. Okay, so that's what we're sort of trying to figure out, because then we say a sum of 915. So we add those two together, and we end up getting a sum of 915. Now, since they're consecutive, think about the numbers 1. The next consecutive number is going to be 2. What did we do to get from 1 to 2? We added 1. Same thing. The next consecutive number would be 3. 2 plus 1 is 3. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to let x be the first number. Okay? And then we're going to let x plus 1 be the second number, because x plus 1 would represent the next consecutive number. So now we have a sum. So we're just substituting into our sort of mock-up of an equation up here. So we have x plus 1. Okay, and this is, again, the first number in the sequence, and then the next consecutive one would be the second, is equal to 915. And just like we did up prior equation, we're going to go ahead and add our x's together. So we have 2x plus 1 is equal to 915. We subtract 1, we get 914 is equal to 2x. Divide by 2. Therefore, our final answer, our first number, is going to be x equals 457, which is just 914 divided by 2. And then x plus 1 was equal to our next consecutive number, so we just add 1, 458. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful. Again, this is our remediation program here at Eastern. We want to make sure that you're prepared for the next Keystone exam when it rolls around. Just remember these steps in identifying in word problems how to write and solve linear equations, or just equations in general. We want to read the problem. We want to assign a variable. We want to write down what the variable represents. So we let x be a number in this first problem, and so on. We reread the problem and wrote an equation. We solved the equation, answered the question, and then checked our solution at the very end to make sure it worked. If you follow these steps every single time, it should really alleviate a lot of stress and a lot of problems that you may see in the future. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.